The Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, a glittering tapestry of ambition and dreams. Celeste Morrison stood at the window, one hand resting on her rounded belly, watching the city pulse, with life 40 stories below. At 7 months pregnant, she had that radiant glow everyone talked about, her auburn hair catching the golden afternoon light. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Marcus Vale's voice was warm honey as his arms encircled her from behind, his hands covering hers on her stomach. "Our son will have the best view in the city." Celeste leaned back against her husband's chest, breathing in his expensive cologne. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," she whispered. 3 years ago, I was cataloging dusty artifacts in a basement museum." Marcus chuckled, pressing a kiss to her neck. "And now you're carrying the future heir to Vale Industries." Quite the promotion, Mrs. Vale. Their love story had been a whirlwind. Marcus, the brilliant tech mogul, had visited her museum for a private viewing of Renaissance art. He'd been charmed by her passion for history, her genuine nature so different from the artificial women in his social circle. Within 6 months, they were married in a ceremony that made the society pages. "The caterers will be here at 5, Marcus said, reluctantly releasing her. "I need to make sure everything's perfect for tonight's dinner. Senator Hayes is flying, in specifically for this." Celeste nodded, though something flickered in her chest. These business dinners had become more frequent lately, and Marcus seemed increasingly distant during them. She pushed the thought away. Pregnancy hormones, she told herself. Her mother had warned her about becoming overly sensitive. "Will your new marketing director be joining us?" she asked casually. "Vivian Cross, yes. She's brilliant, Harvard. MBA, revolutionized campaigns for 3 Fortune 500 companies. She'll be a valuable asset." Marcus's tone was professional, but Celeste caught something else there. Pride? Admiration? The afternoon flew by in a blur of preparations. Celeste selected her maternity dress, a flowing emerald silk that complemented her eyes, and spent an hour with her stylist. She wanted to look perfect for Marcus, to be the radiant wife he could be proud of. As guests began arriving, Celeste slipped into her role as the gracious hostess. She'd learned to navigate these gatherings, making small talk about art and culture while the men discussed business and politics. Tonight felt different, though. There was an undercurrent of excitement, whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. "Celeste, darling, you look absolutely luminous," gushed Patricia Whitmore, the senator's wife. "Marcus is so lucky to have found you." "Thank you, Patricia." "I'm the lucky one," Celeste replied, but her eyes were scanning the room for her husband. She found him near the bar, deep in conversation with a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was stunning in a sharp, sophisticated way. Tall and elegant, with platinum blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon and wearing a figure-hugging black dress that screamed designer. She was leaning toward Marcus, speaking in low, intimate tones that made Celeste's stomach tighten. "That's Vivian Cross." Elena Morrison appeared at her daughter's side, following her gaze. At 55, Elena had the keen instincts of a former nurse and the protective nature of a mother. "She's been watching you all evening." "Mother, don't be dramatic," Celeste said, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When dinner was announced, Celeste found herself seated across from Vivian. Up close, the woman was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that didn't quite reach them. "Mrs. Vale," Vivian said, her voice smooth as silk. "I've heard so much about your work in art history." "It must be fascinating, though quite different from the corporate world." There was something condescending in her tone, a subtle implication that Celeste's academic background was somehow less valuable than business acumen. "I find that understanding the past helps us navigate the present," Celeste replied diplomatically. How philosophical, Vivian smiled, taking a sip of her wine. Marcus tells me you're quite the homebody now. Preparing for motherhood must be all-consuming. The barb hit its mark. Celeste felt heat rise in her cheeks but maintained her composure. I'm fortunate to be able to focus on my family. Throughout dinner, Celeste noticed the subtle interactions between Marcus and Vivian, the way his eyes lingered on her when she spoke, how she touched his arm when making a point, the private smile they shared when they thought no one was looking. After the guests departed, Celeste confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. As she removed her jewelry in their bedroom, she noticed the unfamiliar perfume clinging to Marcus's jacket, something expensive and sensual, definitely not her floral scent. Successful evening, Marcus said, loosening his tie. Vivian made quite an impression on the senator. She certainly made an impression, Celeste replied carefully. She seems very dedicated to her work. Marcus paused, catching something in her tone. She's ambitious, yes. That's what makes her valuable to the company. And to you, personally? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus's expression hardened slightly, the charming mask slipping for just a moment. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Celeste said quickly, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I'm just tired. Pregnancy exhaustion. Marcus's expression softened, and he moved to embrace her. You're carrying our child, love. That's the most important job in the world. As he kissed her forehead, Celeste tried to push away her fears. But deep down, she knew that the perfect life she'd built was starting to crack, and the woman in the black dress was holding the hammer. The evidence was damning. Celeste sat in her home office, staring at the credit card statements she'd finally mustered the courage to examine. Designer jewelry purchases she'd never received. Hotel charges in cities where Marcus claimed to be. Traveling alone. A pattern of deception stretching back months. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, scrolling through Marcus's recent calls. There it was, Vivian Cross. Dozens of calls, many lasting well past business hours. Some as late as midnight, when Marcus claimed to be working in his study. Celeste? Marcus's voice called from the living room. Are you ready? We need to leave for the company gala in 20 minutes. She quickly gathered the papers, her heart racing. Tonight's event was Vale Industries' annual charity gala, 500 of the city's elite gathering to celebrate the company's achievements. She'd been looking forward to it for weeks, but now the thought of facing Vivian again made her stomach churn. Coming, she called back, smoothing her black maternity gown. At 7 months, she felt ungainly and vulnerable, but the dress was elegant and made her feel beautiful. She needed that confidence tonight. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was spectacular, draped in gold and crystal. Celeste moved through the crowd on Marcus's arm, smiling and making small talk while her mind raced. She noticed how Marcus's eyes constantly searched the room, how he seemed distracted during conversations with major donors. There she is, Marcus murmured, and Celeste followed his gaze to see Vivian making her entrance. She wore a stunning red gown that hugged every curve, her platinum hair swept dramatically to one side. Men's heads turned as she passed, but her eyes were locked on Marcus. Marcus, darling. Vivian glided over, air-kissing both his cheeks while barely acknowledging. Celeste, the venue looks incredible. You've outdone yourself. Thank you, Vivian. You look stunning tonight, Marcus replied, his voice carrying a warmth that made Celeste's chest tighten. As the evening progressed, Celeste watched her husband and his marketing director with growing certainty. The way Vivian's fingers lingered on his arm when she laughed. How Marcus's eyes softened when he looked at her. During his speech about the company's future, he made subtle references to new partnerships and exciting collaborations, while his gaze repeatedly found Vivian. In the crowd, when the dancing began, Celeste excused herself to the ladies' room, needing a moment to collect herself. She was touching up her lipstick when Vivian entered. "Celeste," Vivian said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Having a good time?" "It's a lovely event," Celeste replied carefully. "Marcus works so hard on these galas. Of course, he has excellent help now." Vivian moved closer, her smile predatory. "I hope you're not feeling too tired. Pregnancy can be so limiting." "I'm fine. Thank you." "Good, because Marcus needs a wife who can keep up with his ambitions. Someone who understands the demands of his world." Vivian's eyes glittered with malice. "Not everyone is cut out for this life, you know." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Celeste felt a surge of protective anger, not just for herself, but for the child growing inside her. "I understand my husband perfectly well. Do you?" Vivian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. How quaint. After the gala, Celeste could no longer pretend. Back in their penthouse, she confronted Marcus directly. "I know about Vivian," she said, standing in their bedroom doorway as he removed his cufflinks. Marcus went very still. What about her? The hotel bills, the jewelry, the phone calls. Celeste's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I know you're having an affair." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he turned, his expression cold and calculating. "You're being paranoid, Celeste. Pregnancy hormones can cause delusions." "Delusions?" The word hit her like a slap. "I have the evidence, Marcus. You've seen selective information taken out of context." He interrupted, his voice taking on that condescending tone she'd heard him use with incompetent employees. "Vivian is a colleague, a valuable one. If you can't handle that, perhaps you need professional help." "Professional help?" Celeste felt the ground shifting beneath her. "I'm not crazy, Marcus. I know what I saw." "You saw a successful woman threatening your comfortable little world," Marcus said cruelly. "You're so insecure about your place in my life that you're manufacturing conspiracies." His words were like poison, designed to make her question her own sanity. But Celeste had seen enough, felt enough to know the truth. "How long?" she asked quietly. "How long what?" "How long have you been sleeping with her?" Marcus's mask finally slipped completely. His face hardened into something cold and unfamiliar. "You're hysterical. I think you should see Dr. Sullivan about adjusting your medication." "Answer me," Celeste's voice broke. "How long have you been lying to me?" "I've never lied to you," Marcus said, but his eyes were those of a stranger. "I've given you everything. This home, this life, social status, you could never achieve on your own. And this is how you repay me? With accusations and hysteria?" Celeste stared at the man she'd married, seeing him clearly for the first time. The charm, the romance, the declarations of love, it had all been a performance. She was just another acquisition, another status symbol to display. "I want you to end it," she said quietly. "End it, or I'm leaving." Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Leave? And go where? You have nothing without me, Celeste. No career, no money, no friends who weren't mine first. You're carrying my child, and you'll stay right here where you belong." The casual cruelty of his words stole her breath. This was the real Marcus Vale, not the charming billionaire who'd swept her off her feet, but a cold, calculating man who viewed people as possessions. "You're right," she said finally. "I do have nothing, but I have something you don't. Integrity, and I won't raise my child in a house built on lies." As she walked toward the door, Marcus called after her. "Think carefully, Celeste. Cross me and you'll discover just how ruthless I can be." She paused at the threshold, one hand on her belly. "I already have." That night, Celeste lay in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling and planning her escape. She had some savings, her mother's support, and most importantly, the truth. It would have to be enough. What she didn't know was that Marcus was already planning his next move, and Vivian Cross was eager to help him execute it. 3 weeks had passed since Celeste's confrontation with Marcus, and the tension in the penthouse was suffocating. Marcus had become icily polite, treating her like a troublesome houseguest rather than his wife. Meanwhile, Vivian's presence in their lives had become increasingly brazen. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Celeste was in the nursery, carefully arranging tiny clothes in the mahogany dresser Marcus had commissioned from Italy. The room was a masterpiece of soft blues and creams, with hand-painted murals of storybook characters. She'd spent months planning every detail, imagining the moments she'd share here with her son. Still playing house? Vivian's voice cut through the peaceful silence. Celeste turned to find the other woman standing in the doorway, elegant as always in a tailored white suit that made her look like a predatory angel. "This is my home," Celeste said quietly. "You have no right to be here." "Actually, I do." Vivian stepped into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Marcus gave me a key. We've been working late, and it's more convenient for me to stay here sometimes." The casual cruelty of the statement hit Celeste like a physical blow. "Stay. Here? In the guest suite, of course. Marcus is very considerate of his employees' needs." Vivian's smile was razor-sharp. "Oh, I must say, this room is charming. Very maternal." "Get out," Celeste said, her voice shaking with rage. "Oh, I don't think so." Vivian moved closer, examining the carefully arranged baby clothes with mock interest. "You see, Celeste, you're living in a fantasy. Marcus doesn't love you. He never did. You were a novelty, a pretty little nobody who made him feel cultured and refined. But novelties lose their appeal." "You're wrong," Celeste whispered, but doubt crept into her voice. "Am I? Then why hasn't he touched you in weeks? Why does he spend his evenings with me instead of his pregnant wife?" Vivian's eyes glittered with malicious triumph. "Face it, darling, you're yesterday's news." Celeste's hands clenched into fists. "Even if that's true, I'm still his wife. I'm carrying his child." "A child he never wanted," Vivian said casually, examining her manicured nails. "He told me about your little accident, how you forgot to take your birth control and trapped him with a pregnancy. Very calculating of you." "That's not true." Celeste's voice rose. "We planned this baby. Marcus was thrilled when I told him. Marcus is a master at telling people what they want to hear. It's one of his greatest talents." Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "But he told me the truth. How you manipulated him, used your body to secure your position. How he felt trapped by your pregnancy. The lies were expertly crafted, designed to shatter Celeste's confidence and rewrite her. Memories. But even as doubt clawed at her, she held on to the truth she knew. Marcus had wanted this baby, had celebrated with her when they saw the first ultrasound. "You're lying," she said firmly. "Am I?" Vivian pulled out her phone, scrolling through. "Messages. Would you like to see what he texts me about you? About how tired he is of your constant need for attention. How he can't wait until—" "Stop." Celeste's voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my house, now." "Your house?" Vivian laughed. "Darling, everything you think you own belongs to Marcus. This penthouse, these clothes, even that ring on your finger, it's all his. You're just a temporary occupant." Celeste felt something snap inside her. Months of gaslighting, of being made to feel crazy and paranoid, of watching her marriage crumble while being told it was all in her head. It all crystallized into a white-hot rage. "I said get out," she shouted, advancing on Vivian. "Or what?" Vivian's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "You'll what, exactly? Throw a tantrum? Have one of your little emotional breakdowns?" The two women faced each other in the carefully decorated nursery, years of resentment and betrayal crackling between them. Celeste's hands shook with fury, while Vivian's eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. "You want to know the truth?" Vivian said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Marcus is filing for divorce. He's claiming you're mentally unstable, unfit to be a mother. He's going to take custody of that baby and raise it properly, without your neurotic influence." "You're lying," Celeste gasped, but fear clutched at her heart. "The papers are already drawn up. Dr. Sullivan is prepared to testify about your emotional instability. Marcus has been documenting every one of your episodes for months." Vivian's smile was triumphant. "You'll be lucky if you get supervised visitation." "No," Celeste whispered, her hands moving protectively to her belly. "He can't. He can do whatever he wants. He's Marcus Vale. He has money, power, influence. What do you have?" Vivian's voice was like ice. "You're nothing. A nobody who thought she could play in the big leagues." The room seemed to spin around Celeste. The carefully painted walls, the expensive furniture, the tiny clothes she'd chosen with such love. It all felt like a mockery now. Had she really been so naive? So blind to what was happening? "I won't let him take my baby," she said, her voice gaining strength. "You don't have a choice," Vivian replied coolly. "Unless ... Unless what?" "Unless you leave. Tonight. Disappear quietly, and maybe Marcus will be generous in the divorce settlement. Fight him, and he'll destroy you. Completely." Celeste stared at the woman who had systematically dismantled her life. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you," Vivian said, smoothing down her skirt. "I just don't think about you at all. You're an obstacle that needs to be removed." The casual dismissal was somehow worse than outright hatred. Celeste felt something break inside her, not just her heart, but her spirit. She'd been reduced to nothing more than an inconvenience in someone else's life. "I'll never just disappear," she said firmly. "This is my child, too." "Then you'll regret that choice," Vivian said, turning to leave. "Marcus always gets what he wants. Always." As Vivian's heels clicked away down the hall, Celeste sank into the rocking chair she'd imagined using to nurse her son. The room that had been her sanctuary now felt like a prison, and she realized that the real battle for her life was just beginning. The Vale Industries annual board meeting was held in the company's gleaming headquarters, 50 floors above the bustling streets of Manhattan. Celeste had insisted on attending, despite Marcus's protests about her delicate condition. She needed to be there, needed to show strength even as her world crumbled around her. "You look tired, darling," Marcus said, as they rode the elevator to the executive floor. His voice carried that familiar note of false concern that made her skin crawl. "Perhaps you should rest in my office while I handle the meeting." "I'm fine," Celeste replied, though she felt anything but fine. The past month had been a nightmare of psychological warfare. Marcus had begun documenting her every emotion, every moment of fatigue or frustration, building his case for her supposed mental instability. The boardroom was filled with Vale Industries elite, powerful men and women who controlled billions in assets. Celeste took her seat at the back, trying to project confidence despite feeling like an outsider in her own husband's world. Marcus commanded the room with his usual charisma, presenting quarterly earnings and expansion plans. But Celeste's attention was drawn to Vivian, who sat at the conference table like she belonged there, taking notes and occasionally whispering suggestions to Marcus. "As you can see," Marcus was saying, "our new marketing initiatives have exceeded all projections. I'd like to thank our head of marketing, Vivian Cross, for her exceptional contributions." The applause was polite but warm. Vivian stood briefly, her smile radiant as she accepted the recognition. She looked like a queen accepting homage from her subjects. After the meeting, there was a reception on the building's rooftop terrace. The view was spectacular. The city spread out below them like a glittering jewel box. Celeste found herself gravitating toward the railing, needing air and space away from the suffocating small talk. Quite a view, isn't it? Thomas Wright, Marcus's head of security, appeared beside her. He was a quiet man in his late 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that contrasted with his imposing frame. "It's beautiful," Celeste agreed, though the height made her dizzy. At 8 months pregnant, she felt unsteady on her feet. "Mrs. Vale," Thomas said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I want you to know that some of us see what's happening. What he's doing to you." Celeste turned to look at him, surprised by his directness. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." His voice was gentle but firm. "And I want you to know that when the time comes, you'll have all eyes. People who believe in doing what's right." Before Celeste could respond, Vivian appeared at her elbow. "Thomas, Marcus is looking for you. Something about security protocols." Thomas hesitated, his eyes meeting Celeste's briefly. "Of course, Mrs. Vale, please be careful near the railing. It's quite high up here." As he walked away, Vivian moved closer to Celeste. Trying to turn Marcus's own employees against him? How predictable. "I wasn't. Oh, please. You think I don't see what you're doing? Playing the victim, garnering sympathy?" Vivian's voice was low and venomous. "It won't work. Marcus has already made his choice." Celeste gripped the railing, her knuckles white. "What do you want from me?" "I want you gone," Vivian said simply. "I want you out of Marcus's life, out of his company, out of his world." "You're holding him back. I'm his wife. I'm carrying his child." "You're his first wife," Vivian corrected. "Soon to be his ex-wife." "And that baby?" She smiled coldly. "Well, accidents happen." The threat was clear, and Celeste felt a chill of fear. "You wouldn't dare, wouldn't I?" Vivian stepped closer, her expensive perfume cloying in the evening air. "You're standing very close to the edge, Celeste. Pregnant. Women can be so unsteady on their feet." Celeste tried to step back, but Vivian moved with her, crowding her against the railing. The city lights blurred below them, and Celeste felt a wave of vertigo. "You're insane," she whispered. "Unpractical," Vivian replied. "Marcus deserves better than a clingy, neurotic wife who traps him with unwanted pregnancies. He deserves someone who understands his ambitions, who can match his drive." "He loved me," Celeste said, though the words felt hollow. "He loved the idea of you, the sweet, innocent curator who made him feel like a patron of the arts. But that novelty wore off, didn't it? Now you're just another obligation, another burden dragging him down." Each word was a carefully aimed arrow, designed to destroy what remained of Celeste's self-worth. But as she looked at Vivian's perfectly composed face, she felt something else, a burning anger that cut through the fear. "You're wrong," she said firmly. "And even if you weren't, I won't let you destroy what we built." "What you built?" Vivian laughed. "You built nothing. You were given everything, and you're too weak to keep it." The crowd on the terrace was thinning as people moved back inside for dinner. Celeste and Vivian were alone near the railing, the city lights twinkling far below. "I've tried to be patient with you," Vivian said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "I've tried to make this easy, but you're too stupid to take the hint." "I'm not going anywhere," Celeste said, surprised by her own strength. "Yes," Vivian said softly, "you are." It happened so fast that Celeste barely had time to process it. Vivian's hands slammed into her shoulders with shocking force, sending her stumbling backward toward the railing. For a terrifying moment, Celeste felt herself falling, the wind rushing past her face as she tilted over the edge. Her hands shot out desperately, grasping at anything to stop her fall. Her fingers found the railing, and she managed to pull herself back from the brink, her heart pounding like a drum. "You tried to kill me," she gasped, staring at Vivian in horror. "I tried to help you make a better choice," Vivian replied calmly, smoothing down her hair. "But you're too stubborn to accept reality." Thomas Wright appeared at the terrace doors, his eyes immediately taking in the scene. "Mrs. Vale? Are you all right?" "She pushed me," Celeste said, her voice shaking. "She tried to push me over the edge." Thomas's face hardened as he looked at Vivian. "Is that true?" "Of course not," Vivian said with a perfect smile. Poor Celeste got dizzy and stumbled. "I tried to help her, but she's so paranoid these days. She imagined I was attacking her." "You're lying," Celeste said desperately. "Thomas, you have to believe me." But she could see the doubt in his eyes. Vivian was composed, believable, while she was shaking and emotional. Who would believe her story? "Perhaps we should get you inside," Thomas said gently. "You've had a shock." As he escorted her back into the building, Celeste caught sight of Marcus across the room. He was watching them with those cold, calculating eyes, and she realized with chilling certainty that he had known exactly what Vivian was planning. Her perfect life hadn't just fallen apart. It had been deliberately destroyed. And now she was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. The hospital room was sterile and white, a stark contrast to the opulent penthouse Celeste had called home. She lay in the narrow bed, her hands resting on her still rounded belly, feeling the gentle movements of her son. The fall had been terrifying, but miraculously, both she and the baby had survived with only minor injuries. "You're lucky," Dr. James Sullivan said, reviewing her chart. "A few bruises, some strained muscles, but no serious damage. The baby's heartbeat is strong." Celeste nodded, though luck felt like the wrong word. She'd been pushed toward death by a woman who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle. Marcus had arrived at the hospital hours later, playing the role of concerned husband perfectly for the medical staff. "Darling, I'm so sorry," he'd said, taking her hand with theatrical tenderness. "When Thomas told me you'd fallen, I was terrified." But Celeste had seen the calculation in his eyes, the way he'd glanced at Vivian lurking in the hallway. They'd planned this together. She was certain of it. "I need to tell you something," she said to Dr. Sullivan when Marcus stepped out to take a call. "I didn't fall. I was pushed." Dr. Sullivan's expression grew concerned. "Pushed? By whom?" "Marcus's colleague, Vivian Cross. She tried to push me over the railing." The doctor's face showed the familiar skepticism Celeste had come to expect. "Mrs. Vale, you've been through a traumatic experience. Sometimes our minds—" "I'm not imagining this," Celeste interrupted. "She's been threatening me for weeks. She wants me out of Marcus's life." "Have you spoken to anyone about these concerns? A counselor, perhaps?" Celeste felt the familiar trap closing around her. Every time she tried to tell the truth, she was painted as unstable, paranoid, unfit. "I'm not crazy," she said quietly. "Of course not, but stress can cause Mrs. Vale." Thomas Wright appeared in the doorway. "May I speak with you privately?" Dr. Sullivan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be back to check on you later." When they were alone, Thomas closed the door and moved closer to her bed. "I know what really happened on that terrace," he said quietly. Hope flared in Celeste's chest. "You believe me? I've been watching Vivian Cross since she joined the company. She's dangerous, manipulative. And I think Marcus is planning something that will put you in even more danger." "What do you mean?" Thomas pulled out a small recording device. "I've been documenting things. Conversations, plans. Marcus is building a case to have you declared mentally incompetent. He wants custody of the baby and control of your assets. Celeste felt the blood drain from her face. My assets? Your trust fund, your inheritance from your father's estate. It's worth millions. Marcus has been planning this for months, maybe longer. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. So he never loved me at all. I don't think Marcus Vale is capable of love, Thomas said sadly. But I think you are. And I think your baby deserves better than this. Over the next few days, as Celeste recovered, Thomas shared everything he'd discovered. Marcus and Vivian had been planning to eliminate her as an obstacle, making it look like an accident or a suicide brought on by postpartum depression. With her gone, Marcus would inherit everything and raise the child with Vivian. We need proof, Celeste said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Something undeniable. I'm working on it, Thomas promised. But we need to be careful. If Marcus suspects... Their opportunity came sooner than expected. Marcus had scheduled a meeting with his lawyers to finalize the competency proceedings. Thomas had bugged the conference room, and they listened in horror as Marcus and Vivian discussed their plans. Once the baby is born, we accelerate the timeline. Marcus's voice was cold and businesslike. Postpartum depression provides the perfect cover. A tragic accident, maybe an overdose of sleeping pills. And if she fights back? Vivian asked. She won't be in any condition to fight. Dr. Sullivan is already concerned about her mental state. A few more episodes, and we'll have all the documentation we need. Celeste felt sick listening to them plan her death with such casual efficiency. But she also felt something else, a fierce determination to protect her child and expose the truth. I have enough, Thomas said, stopping the recording. This, combined with the security footage from the terrace, should be enough to destroy them both. Security footage? Celeste's eyes widened. You recorded what happened? Every inch of the building is monitored. I have it all. Vivian pushing you. Marcus watching from inside. Their conversation afterward. Everything. Working with Thomas, Celeste crafted a plan. They would present all the evidence to the authorities simultaneously. The FBI for the financial crimes, the police for the attempted murder, and the media to ensure the story couldn't be buried. The day of reckoning came during Vale Industries' quarterly board meeting. As Marcus stood before the assembled board members, FBI agents walked into the room, followed by Detective Rosa Martinez and a team of officers. Marcus Vale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and financial crimes, the lead agent announced. The room erupted in chaos. Board members shouted questions, security guards moved to intervene, and Marcus stood frozen, his face pale with shock. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice cracking. I demand to speak to my lawyer. Vivian Cross, Detective Martinez said, approaching the conference table. You're under arrest for attempted murder. Vivian's composure finally cracked. This is insane. I've done nothing wrong. We have security footage showing you pushing Mrs. Vale toward the railing, Martinez said calmly, and recordings of you planning her murder. As the arrests were made, Celeste watched from the back of the room, flanked by Thomas and her mother. She felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. The man she'd once loved was being led away in handcuffs, but she'd also been proven right. About everything. The media coverage was extensive. Billionaire's murder plot exposed, read the headlines. Pregnant wife fights back against killer husband. In the weeks that followed, more victims came forward. Other women Marcus had manipulated and discarded, employees he'd threatened into silence, business partners he'd defrauded. The empire he'd built on lies and cruelty crumbled piece by piece. Celeste gave birth to a healthy boy in a small hospital room, surrounded by people who truly cared about her. She named him Oliver, after her father, and as she held him for the first time, She felt a peace she'd never experienced in the penthouse. "He's beautiful," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Your father would be so proud." Thomas had resigned from Vale Industries and started his own security firm, specializing in protecting victims of domestic abuse. He'd become a close friend, and gradually something more. They were taking things slowly, building a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. The trial was a media sensation. Marcus and Vivian turned on each other, each trying to minimize their own culpability. Marcus claimed he'd been manipulated by Vivian's ambition, while she insisted she'd been following his orders. In the end, both were convicted. Marcus received 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. Vivian got 15 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. As Celeste walked out of the courthouse, holding Oliver in her arms, she felt truly free for the first time in years. The gilded cage had been shattered, and she'd emerged stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. "What now?" Thomas asked, walking beside her. Celeste looked up at the blue sky, then down at her son's peaceful face. "Now we build something real," she said, "something honest and true." The nightmare was over. Her real life was just beginning.